So I thought I'd try and theme the reading a little bit around the title of this event, which is Excessive Sensibility, the gravestone there of Sarah Fletcher. I mean, it's not a very cheery theme, I suppose, for a bank holiday, her dying of excessive sensibility. But I suppose an attack of nerves, possibly a euphemism for suicide, I don't know. Luckily, I've only got one poem that deals with suicide directly, so I'll get that out of the way first. It's called Heroine's Bath. It's written in response to a large abstract painting by a German artist called Daniel Eltinger. It's a sort of blue and red piece. Heroine's Bath. She sees a kingfisher's wing and a lizard's pupil set in shining skin. The nacreous glaze on the dinner plates, the fish heads, pheasant, candied dates, the children at their games, wine on the carpet, flames. Midday breaking through the thin guise of her drowsy, half-closed eyes. Then the darkening sky above her head and stars against the last of sunset's red. She sees the gathered dust on her late father's copper bust, his robes of state, and the graveyard trees stirred by a cold, unwelcome breeze. She sees the blue porcelain and the water as it fills with the life of no one's daughter. So as the poems I'm going to read all come from my pamphlet, I'm obviously limited in the ways that I can interpret the theme. So I picked up on the fact that her husband, Captain Fletcher, was a naval captain and was at sea when she died, and also that she's described as having sunk, metaphorically. And luckily I have a lot of poems in this book that deal with water in various ways, so I'll read a few of those now. This is called Day's Last Wave. Each afternoon, he would make the drive 15 miles west from his house to see the breaking of the last wave of the day. Armed with an accurate prediction of the time of its setting, and with one eye on the sun, or, if obscured by a cloud, on the second display of his digital waterproof watch, the other on the lick of the surf as it ran along the parched lip of this small, secluded gravel beach. As the end of the sun teased the edge of the horizon, he would prepare to record the details of the final wave unfolding in daylight, noting down in his third thick notebook the sound as it sprawled against the stones, the height approximately before it fell, and the colours of its collapsing body. When he arrived home, he could still hear the push and sigh of the sea working at the shore in the thickening dark. It's called Cinema of the Drowned. Suspended behind the swollen screen and held in place by a horizontal trick of surface tension, bodies shift in the creak and groan of the straining deep. Limbs curved in careless abandon, as though subsiding at the apex of a jump. Hair swept by the flex of the current. Once again, you pass the hidden entrance. Walk on, change your mind, turn back and enter, picking your way through the empty seats in the mute dark, far from the crest and trough of the waves. Sit back and bathe in the cold glow of sea-filtered moonlight, the grey, saturated flesh of the dead. The seat is warm from your last visit. Listen, you still cannot fathom the drag. This next poem, House of Rivers, it's sort of constructed in a way that's similar to some other poems in here. And I take two sort of contradictory ideas. In this case, the idea of solidity as embodied in a house and fluidity as embodied in water and particularly in rivers, and sort of put them together. This House of Rivers. For days, you hear the din of wind through trees as simply that, until your fire hangs a cord of smoke from the sky, straight as a plumb line, and your finger comes down damp, with the lick you planted on it still warm, and you know that you are close. 2 hours, and you are facing the house. By now, the sound has grown so loud, it seems that all the rivers of the world have burst their banks to run as one. The walls are unscrolling from the roof and going to ground in broken waves. The door stands open centre left, as though a rock or fallen branch has blocked the water's path. The earth tips back to point at dusk, and sun shines clear through the frame, lighting the unobstructed stream, bending unbidden round the lintel. You dip your head to step inside. Within an hour, your skin is bloated. After 2, you no longer blink at the spray coughed in your face. By morning, your lungs have shrunk to stones. Your neck flares as you breathe. This poem, Church Flats Farm. Church Flats Farm is a location in Derbyshire that's been identified by the Ordnance Survey as being the furthest point in the UK from the sea. But of course, being in the UK, the nearest coast is only about 70 miles away. So this poem looks at that sort of paradox of proximity and distance existing in the same place. Church Flats Farm. All night, the waves are in his room, lifting him from half-dreams of bladderwrack and driftwood. The walls breathe like filling sails. The blood tide beats in his ears. He is feverish and sleepless, far from instruments, with no navigator, and the pole star lost behind plaster. When arthritis closed around his hands, he left the sea and made his way here, the furthest he could move inland, and stripped his boat to make a bed. Mornings now, he wakes with dry lips, salt blur glazing the window. You'll be pleased to hear this is the final water poem I'm going to read. It's called The Lake. There is a lake that freezes once only in a lifetime. The centre holds an island, squat as a bronze boss on a silver, shimmering shield. Too distant to be seen from shore, although the lake is small and could be shouted over on a day when the wind is right. It is miles from the nearest village, shaded from the sun by a neat half-moon of craggy, treeless mountains, and is a place you would not visit twice. But come when weather warnings have cleared the paths of weekend walkers, and all the native birds have passed you on their journey south, and you might find the water fastened down with ice. And if you choose to make the walk, don't stop. The surface creaks and mutters at your back. Speed up. Keep the looming island in your sight. The freeze will hold you only once. So as I said, the inscription talks about Sarah Fletcher dying of excessive sensibility and sort of sinking into despair, I suppose, and worry. This next poem, First Inhabitant of the Asylum, deals, I think, with a character suffering from something similar. At times, she simply stands for days in front of windows smeared with rain. Others, drawn on a cord of hunger, she turns towards the strip-lit kitchen for a tin of soup or beans that someone must have taught her to open but not to cook. The hob snug in polythene, the drawer of spoons sealed shut, kettle and toaster unplugged. Through the endless rise and fall of years, she keeps her frail clockwork turning. The wren that darts from a bush is as nameless to her as the fists in her pockets. The stacks of clouds that perform daily are just shapes against a changing wall. Trees shiver and tap the glass. Rusted heat pipes grumble. And she drags her feet in sterile corridors, waiting for the rest of them to arrive. Do you remember that day we found the first horse? It was skittering the dust in a forgotten field, adjacent to a farmhouse that must have stood forever. This was the horse from which all other horses were bred, the horse of cave paintings and untranslatable mythology. Undomesticated, rough-haired and small, it looked more like a mongrel dog. We took it to the backyard of our rented ground-floor flat. Our friends came over to see it. That's a dog, they told us. We resolved not to speak to them again. We brought our horse fresh-cut grass every spring and oats throughout the winter, but it grew thin and restless. We asked your uncle the vet to inspect it for us. He took you into a corner and spoke in a gentle, concerned tone, as though he had forgotten you were an adult. You sent him away and cried for a bit. That evening, to cheer you up, we watched a documentary on horses and thought how proud our horse must be to have delivered this noble race. Do you remember that day we found the first horse chewing a rubber ball thrown over by the neighbours? Yeah, I thought we'd better have something a bit light after the quite intense beginning. And sticking with lighter poems, this one, The Restaurant, it's always amused me. It's maybe not light, but I kind of find it funny. I'm not sure if other people do though, so we'll find out. The Restaurant. 1. Most of the walls are black with the juice of berries imported for just that purpose. On those not daubed with the dark liquid hang candid photos of your distant relatives committing petty and archaic crimes. 2. The waiters are dressed for a funeral, and the concierge questions your levity in the face of such grief. You are handed a wine list bound with the hair of every beautiful woman who has ever dined there. 3. On entering, the lights are turned so high you can feel the heat falling from them. Within minutes, the smell of sweating cheese and humid fish has filled the dining area. The windows and doors are sealed for effect. 4. In place of menus are books of ingredients subdivided into 3 independent segments, such as are used by children to construct chimeras. Someone has substituted one panel of the main courses with one from the desserts. 5. The entire restaurant, including kitchen, has been moved into the toilets while renovations take place. On entering, all parties are segregated by sex. You may help yourself to the tap water. 6. A week before dining, you must submit portraits and brief summaries of friends with whom you have lost touch. When you arrive, the cooks are wearing masks depicting your friends' faces and mimic their mannerisms with absurd exaggeration. 7. Sensitive microphones have been fixed under some of the tables, and the sounds are relayed instantly to speakers set at a volume just high enough to be heard. Today, the first hints of feedback are creeping into the layered chatter. Before I read my last poem, I'd like to thank you all for coming, particularly on such a lovely evening. It's great to see so many people here. And I should say that copies of this are available to buy for £4 at the end. This poem, The Way, is, I suppose it's unique in a sense amongst the poems in this book, in that it was composed rather than written. I was driving from Birmingham to Oxford, and the poems sort of came to me in 5-line chunks that I sort of said over and over until I had them memorised and then scribbled down when I got home. And it remains pretty much in the form it came to me. Although I should say, despite the location of its composition, I think the location of the poem is sort of non-specific. I certainly didn't have the UK in mind. The Way. Drive again through the last outlying, rain-shuttered village, beyond the final fuel stop, past where the road inclines again, then levels out. Tune the radio to the dead melodies of that country's only great composer and focus on the dwindling road ahead. As you move outside the station's reach, wait for the rising background static to mingle with the trumpet's sombre melody. And when the closing note is lost beneath that black squall, crank the volume dial clockwise. Drop your windows, let your car become a needle in a groove of infinite diameter. That sound is not the shifting of the continents, not the heaving of the gathered clouds, or stretching of the oak's dark roots. That sound is not your lover's breath, but tonight it's near enough. Thank you very much.